reflex, voluntary actions and conditional reflexes. At the end of this lesson, you should be able to explain the following. 1. Reflex and voluntary actions. 2. The reflex arc. 3. Differences between reflex and voluntary actions. 4. Conditioned reflexes. 5. Differences between hormonal and nervous coordination. Reflex and voluntary actions. Actions are a result of stimuli, which can be classified into two categories: involuntary, reflex actions, and voluntary actions. Reflex actions. Reflex actions are automatic responses to stimuli that occur without the involvement of conscious or higher brain centers. These actions are primarily protective, safeguarding us from dangerous stimuli, and aiding in maintaining posture and balance. Examples of reflex actions include leg jerking and eye blinking. The reflex arc. The reflex arc consists of the following components: A. Sensory receptors that receive the stimulus. B. Sensory neurons that transmit the sensory impulse. C. Relay or intermediate neurons through which the sensory impulse is passed. D. Motor, efferent, neurons that transmit the response. E. Effectors, muscles and glands, that are triggered by motor impulses to produce an appropriate response. Reflex actions can be categorized as 1. Spinal reflexes involving the spinal cord, such as the knee-jerk reflex. 2. Cranial reflexes involving the brain, for example, the closing of the pupil in response to bright light. Voluntary actions. Voluntary actions are initiated and controlled by the conscious part of the brain and involve cognitive processes before execution. They involve A. The conscious parts of the cerebrum. B. Most components of the reflex arc. C. Ascending and descending fibers in the spinal cord. Examples of voluntary actions include playing football, solving mathematical problems, walking, and driving. Differences between reflex and voluntary actions. Reflex action. 1. Involves unconscious brain centers. 2. Involves a smaller number of neurons. 3. Response is rapid. 4. Response is stereotyped. 5. Inburn. Voluntary action. 1. Involves conscious brain centers. 2. Involves numerous neurons. 3. Response is slow. 4. Response varies with circumstances. 5. Can be learned. Conditioned reflexes. A reflex action can be either instinctive, inherent and not learned, or conditioned, learned responses or behaviors that can be performed without conscious thought. Examples of conditioned reflexes include walking, riding a bicycle, and writing. Ivan Pavlov, a renowned Russian biologist, demonstrated conditioned reflexes by associating a puppy's food time with the sound of a bell. Roles of conditioned reflexes on behavior. A. Helps in acquiring new skills and habits through learning. B. Modifies many simple reflex actions based on associated conditions. C. Enables complex behavior by making movements faster and more automatic. Differences between hormonal and nervous coordination. Nervous coordination. 1. Messages are transmitted as electrical impulses. 2. Transmission occurs through nerve fibers. 3. Transmission is very fast. 4. Response is fast, short-lived, and precise. 5. Mainly controlled by the brain and spinal cord. 6. Effectors, muscles and glands, receive the message. Hormonal coordination. 1. Messages are transmitted as chemical impulses. 2. Transmission occurs through the bloodstream. 3. Transmission is slow. 4. Response is slow, long-lasting, and widespread. 5. Controlled by the pituitary gland. 6. Target organs receive the message. Conclusion. In conclusion, I will summarize this lesson by explaining some main points. 1. Voluntary action refers to actions initiated and controlled by the conscious part of the brain, involving cognitive processes. Reflex action denotes automatic responses to stimuli that do not require conscious or higher brain centers. 2. Examples of voluntary actions: playing a musical instrument, speaking a foreign language, dancing, painting, singing. Examples of reflex actions: sneezing, coughing, pupillary reflex, gag reflex, withdrawal reflex. 3. Differences between voluntary and reflex actions. Voluntary actions involve conscious brain centers, while reflex actions do not. Reflex actions have a faster response time compared to voluntary actions. Voluntary actions can vary depending on circumstances, whereas reflex actions are stereotyped. Reflex actions are innate, while voluntary actions can be learned. 4. Examples of conditioned reflexes: associating the smell of food with hunger, reacting to the sound of an alarm clock by waking up, feeling anxious in certain situations, anticipating pain from past experiences, experiencing joy upon seeing a loved one. 5. The roles of conditioned reflexes on behavior include facilitating the acquisition of new skills and habits through learning, modifying simple reflex actions based on associated conditions, enabling complex behavior by automating and accelerating movements,